Hey guys, I'm Andrew with thedirtytank.com, and today I want to go over 6 mistakes that I made whenever I started this 20-gallon log. So to start off with, I really enjoyed this 20-gallon fish tank. It is absolutely beautiful. It really looks great, but as I was looking at it, there are a few things that if I had to do it all over again, I would change, maybe just slightly. The first thing that I would change, and I actually already changed it, is how much light I've been putting into the tank. Now, this aquarium used to have 2 lights on top of it, and so it was getting a ton of light. And what I noticed was happening is I was getting more algae, obviously, and then I was also getting a lot of growth on my floating plants. Now, I'm fine with my floating plants growing because I think that helps keep the water quality under control, and I also sell my floating plants, so it helps support the hobby, helps me buy some extra fish food and maybe extra fish. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to an extent. But what would happen is the floating plants would grow so much that it would create like this thick layer on the surface where light just wasn't getting through. And what I noticed is that some of my dwarf hairgrass was starting to suffer because there wasn't enough light coming through. It just was harder to see during the daytime as well when the lights are on. So having too much light was one thing I had to make a change to. Even when I took off one of the lights and I have just the one, it was still a good amount of light that was causing a little bit more algae than what I would like. So I was having to maintenance the tank a little bit more often than I normally do. I like really low maintenance, low tech aquariums where I just do a water change every couple months and it's good. I was having to do a little bit more work on this one, even with the single light. So I had to dial back how long the light was on for and the light intensity. This one stays between 6 and 8 hours, and the intensity, it's only at full intensity for like 3 hours. During the other parts of the day, it's at much lower intensity, and what I'm seeing is that it looks great, and I have to maintenance it a lot less, which I'm really happy about. Now, the second mistake that I made, the second thing I would change with this aquarium is the stand. Now, the stand that it's on right now, it's nice, it looks good, but it's not an aquarium stand. Now, this is a 20-gallon fish tank, so it's about 200 pounds, so you don't have to get a specific aquarium stand for it. It can go on another piece of furniture, like this is a TV console. And I looked at what the manufacturer said as far as maximum weight, and it could definitely support a 200-pound fish tank on it. So that's what I use. Now, it does look good. It definitely holds and does what it needs to do, but I do wish that the tank was a little bit higher, right? If I look at other aquarium stands, especially for my 75-gallon, it's a good 5-6 inches taller, which I think would look much better. To get a good look at this tank, I normally have to crouch over, or I have to sit down on this little bench that I'm sitting on now, which is really tiny. I keep some of my fish stuff in here, but that's the only way I can kind of get a good look at this tank, is I have to kind of go down to get a good peek and enjoy this tank really. The other reason why I want it to be a little bit taller is because this is the tank that you see once you come into my house. Now, I think the tank looks beautiful, but at standing level, whenever guests or myself come into the house, it doesn't look its best at this low angle from people who are standing up. So I wish this stand was a little bit taller. So it's something I'm going to have to take into consideration whenever I decide to redo this tank, which maybe a year from now, possibly, if I get tired of it. Let me know if you guys think I should keep it like it is, or if you believe in changing scapes every year or so. I'm a big believer because I get an itch to do an aquascape every 6 months to a year, but I'm really liking the way this one's looking, so I may keep it and just upgrade this stand. Haven't decided yet. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Now, the third thing I would change about this aquarium is what sand I use. Now, I use white sand on here, and I like the white sand, but my preference is slowly evolving. I'm really into natural planted aquariums now, and so that means that I also am now preferring more natural colored sand. So your brown with some texture in it. Now, I do still think it looks really good, but I am leaning towards more of a natural aquarium, so I want that look in the substrate as well. Now, the other reason why I am not the biggest fan of white sand is that on camera, unless I change the brightness settings on my camera, it's kind of hard to see. It's just like a white blare. Now, I had to tone down the ISO on the camera so that you can actually see the sand, but just normal settings would cause it to be really, really bright. And for someone who does a lot of pictures and videos of their fish tanks, it's kind of a big deal. If you're not someone who takes a lot of pictures or videos, yeah, this is probably a non-issue for you. But for me, since I do a good bit of YouTube videos and other type of videos on social media, it does kind of become a big deal and kind of a burden when I have to change those settings each time. Now, the fourth thing that I would change here in this aquarium is sloping the substrate. So you always see in the really great aquascaping videos that they have a really slanted slope, right? So the substrate, the sand, the gravel, whatever it may be, it starts off, I guess, lower in the front and it gets gradually higher in the back. And there's a number of reasons for that. You always hear aquascapers saying that it creates depth, but what does that mean? You know, that's just, what does depth mean? In my opinion, the reason why you should slope the substrate is so that you can appropriately see and admire everything at one single distance, right? So if you have, imagine this is the best way to put it. Imagine you're in a grocery store, right? And all the items are on one shelf. Instead of, 5 different shelves where you can see the cereal, granola bars, the Pop-Tart, imagine it's just on one, right? The cereal's here, granola bars are behind it, Pop-Tarts are behind that, right? You can't see, if the cereal's in front, you can't see the other breakfast items because it's just all on one pane of view. And that's kind of what it's like to slope your substrate here. That if you do that, you can see all the different levels of plants, right? One plant doesn't block the rest, one rock doesn't block the rest, and so on. And you can also see the fish kind of doing their things as they're in the front of the tank or further in the back, because you have that slope background that allows you to do that. Now, the fifth thing that I would change on this aquarium is that I don't have anything coming out of the tank. And all my tanks that I've made most recently have stuff coming out of the tank because I just really like that look. I think it looks amazing. You added extra element to your aquarium, something coming out of it. And I didn't do it on this one. Now, it's something I can kind of add after the fact, sure. But I wish I would have kind of built it in to be more appropriate for the scape as well, and it just look like it was made together. So that's one thing that I really wish I would have done whenever I was setting up this tank, because things coming out of your tank just look really, really good. Now, the sixth thing that I would change in this scape would be the foreground plants. Or maybe the fish choice that I made. I don't know if I would necessarily change it, but I would have to structure it a little bit better, right? So I'd have to make some kind of changes. So what happens if you look right here, there's a giant mound of sand and there's a little bit of dwarf hairgrass poking out through there. And what's happening is I got a couple species of freshwater gobies. And what they're doing is they're digging a little cave and pushing sand out, and all that sand is covering my dwarf hairgrass, preventing it from growing. So I just have like a compatibility issue where I have a carpeting plant and then I have a fish that likes to dig. So it's not tearing up the dwarf hairgrass per se, but it is preventing it from spreading and growing as quickly because it is doing all this digging. So I would definitely have to do something different. If you looked at this side, you can see there's a lot more dwarf hairgrass, and over here there's a lot less. And the reason being is these gobies, they like to dig little caves right at the base of these rocks. And so this dwarf hairgrass is a lot closer to this rock, and so it's getting all the sand on it. And so I think I would have to make sure that I do maybe a little bit taller plant in this area. that can carpet, maybe some micro sword or some type of dwarf sag, and just keep it trimmed short. That way I can still have that kind of effect that I'm looking for with a foreground plant that kind of carpets the front area. But those are the kind of things you have to put up with when you have living organisms inside your fish tank here. They have a mind of their own, and no matter what your idea is, they're gonna do what they want and make it their home regardless. Well guys, that's gonna wrap up today's video. Let me know the things that you would change in your aquarium or things you would change in this one. I'm always looking at ways to tweak and make the whole ecosystem better, so would love to hear your thoughts. And until next time guys, see ya.